The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So the latest with President Trump's war on our intelligence community is that Trump is looking to revoke the security clearances of a bunch of high-level officials who have previously criticized him. And Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders read a list of the people that Trump was considering for revocation of their clearances. And this includes former CIA Director John Brennan, who has, of course, been fairly critical. And by fairly, I don't mean significantly. I mean in a fair way, in a fair manner, critical of President Trump, including his total failure to stand up to Vladimir Putin and to stand up for the U.S. intelligence community at that abortive Helsinki summit, calling it nothing short of treasonous. And there's a bunch of other officials as well, and they are looking to have these security clearances pulled, and this is something that Senator Rand Paul seems to be in favor of. He tweeted out that he met with Trump and encouraged him to do this exact same thing. And this is a very, very dangerous path to go down. I don't think I have to explain that to anybody in our audience, because unless they've actually done something that merits the removal of a security clearance, and of course it's very specific what that would be, it is an extraordinarily dangerous precedent to set to start revoking security clearances on the basis of politics. What if President Obama all of a sudden decided he is going to be much more significantly critical of Donald Trump, and Trump says, well, you know what, I'm pulling his security clearance, which he gets to keep after he's no longer president. This is as dangerous as criticizing the media as a whole. It's not surprising that Trump is going to this. These are the moves of a very, very desperate and insecure man. And I think that insecurity is something that presents like a systemic risk for the country.
That being said, though, I think they could have a point so long as there's consistency with when you revoke and remove security clearances. So let's think about John Brennan, for example. Yep. The expectation for a CIA director is to be apolitical while they're in that position, right? Not to comment on politics, their opinions of the president.
Sure.
And then when they leave office, it's totally okay for them to voice their opinion like Brennan has. In the same sense, should maybe it be okay for them to obviously have a security clearance when they're in that position of power, but once they leave, maybe they'll take it away? If that seems consistent to me.
Change the rules if that's what you want the rules to be. But right now, those aren't the rules. The rules are you get to keep your security clearance unless something has taken place, which would suggest that you're not allowed to keep it anymore. Full stop, right? And that's the thing. And I would even say, with the regard of these individuals being political, people like Michael Hayden, who, by the way, is also on this list, and many, many others, they've been critical of policy for a very, very long time. James Clapper, Michael Hayden, a lot of these guys. And now to say, well, all of a sudden, now that the heat is really on Trump, now that it's undeniable that the guy is totally a captive of Putin and Russia, now they're going to pull the security clearances. It's just more bogus politics from a very, very insecure man.
I was surprised by this, but actually a large number of Americans have a security clearance.
Yep.
It's
different levels.
Different levels for sure, but it's like 4 million people.
Yeah.
So if you're going to revoke some, you don't start with people who were at the heads of these major agencies like John Brennan and Michael Clapper, right?
You would have to make a case that these people actually represent a national security risk by having the security clearances. And of course, it's very hard to make that case unless Trump is going to make this broad statement, which I think he is in a way doing, which is to say that high-ranking intelligence officials criticizing a sitting president emboldens our enemies and weakens America. But it's such a specious case. Like, it's so broad and general as to be completely meaningless.
Yeah. One correction. I said Michael Clapper, I meant James Clapper.
James Clapper, Michael Hayden.
Yeah, Michael Hayden. Okay, both those guys anyway. But it's also pretty interesting how Jared Kushner, for the longest time, had a top-level secret security clearance, despite the fact that he lied on his forms, the fact that Steve Bannon was on the National Security Council for the longest time. How does that square up? Those people are allowed to be at the highest levels of government, privy to all this information, and yet these former CIA directors, FBI directors, they got to go.
Yeah, there's bigger security risks within Trump's own staff than the former intelligence officials that Trump is now threatening to have security clearances revoked from. There was this story recently about a restaurant in Texas where a waiter said he received a racist note from a customer. His name is Kyle Cavill, 20 years old. He posted a receipt with a note that read, "We don't tip terrorists," on his Facebook page. It went completely viral. He said that that's what was that's what he got from one of the tables that he had served at the Saltgrass Steakhouse in Odessa, Texas. And we now have learned that the note was a lie. The restaurant apologized to the customer that was accused of the note. The customer had been banished from the restaurant. They have now been invited to come back, and the employee is the one who fabricated the entire story. And the restaurant is making it clear that racism of any form is intolerable, and they would always act swiftly should there actually be racism in an establishment. But in this case, it is a false accusation of racism, which is equally disturbing. They're doing the right thing.
Yeah, what a horrible thing to do, to make up a false accusation like this.
Yeah.
For many reasons. One, because you're saying it happened to you by a specific person, right?
That's right.
And I don't know if he revealed his identity or not. I hope he didn't, but that's a terrible thing to do.
The restaurant knows who it is. I don't know that we know who the person is. But yeah, I mean, of course the restaurant does.
Well, that's good at least. And also, it makes us skeptical of those other cases, right? Because there are plenty of cases where someone refuses to tip, says something racist on the receipt.
Yep.
And by and large, those are true, right?
Yes.
I mean, pretty much all that we've heard about except for this one case, right?
I think there's maybe been one or two other notable ones that were not real. But yeah, it's a real thing. And sometimes there are people on the right who will say, accusing someone of racism is the worst thing you can do. I don't know that that's true. Like, accusing someone of child rape is pretty bad. I don't know that saying that someone is racist, if it's untrue, is worse than saying that they're a child sexual assaulter. So I don't really buy into that. But falsely accusing someone of something as bad as racism is a really, really bad thing. I don't doubt that for a second. It's absolutely horrible, and it's got to be taken seriously. Now, it's not a false rape allegation, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked about how, particularly recently, there have been a couple of cases of false rape allegations which were punished pretty severely. And we talked about one of those on the bonus show just a couple of months ago. This is not a criminal act. Falsely saying someone is racist is not the same as falsely and knowingly accusing someone of a crime. But in society, we've got to make it clear that this is not okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not the same in that it's not a criminal act, but it has an effect on the movement in a very similar way. Like, if you make a false rape accusation, that could make people skeptical by and large of the entire Me Too movement,
Sure.
right? And we don't want that to happen.
We don't.
In the same sense,
there are people that do want that to happen, actually.
Yeah.
And it would be a great way to get more skepticism of the movement, which is doing stuff like this. But I agree with you. I don't want that to happen.
yeah, and we don't want these fake racist notes to spoil the entire pot. What is it? What's the idiom there?
It's
the proverb?
You're
One bad
tainting
egg.
you're tainting the pool, or
One bad apple can
spoil the
spoil the
bunch,
whole bunch.
spoil the tree. But that's not true. If you've
Yeah,
got one
that's
apple
not-
that's bad, it just falls off. The other apples keep growing. I don't know.
I think we should move on.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to the next story. Forbes published over the weekend a story that was subsequently taken down for its supposed controversy. And it was an editorial piece arguing that libraries, public libraries, are a waste of taxpayer money and should be replaced by Amazon stores. There is a nice little future dystopia op-ed for you. And ultimately, the article was taken down because the author, Panos Mourdoukatukis, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that exactly right, is not an expert in libraries. He's a professor who specializes in world economy. And he and the article are receiving a lot of backlash. And that the idea here is this guy doesn't know anything about libraries. And he shouldn't be commenting about whether public funding should be used for libraries or not. And I tend to agree that we should actually be funding public libraries. Public libraries serve so many obvious, important purposes. Number one, we want people to be more informed generally so that they are better, more proactive citizens in the world within which they live. If you can't afford books, what place are you going to go to do the learning other than the library where you can get books for free? Number two, access to the internet, the ability to apply to jobs. If we claim to want to reduce the unemployment rate, well, a lot of job application is done. If we claim to want to reduce poverty, a lot of job application is done almost exclusively online at this point. So having libraries where people from the community can go and get on the internet is crucial to reducing poverty and finding people jobs. There's just no good argument for getting rid of libraries. And now let me make the purely economic argument, okay? Because this guy's background was economics. Let's play out the economic argument. The negative externalities that are reduced by having libraries, I would bet, although I don't know that it's been studied, I would bet are far greater than the cost of the library itself. Libraries are just not that expensive. And if you think about the reduction in crime that you have, not only from the existence of the libraries, but because more educated people are less likely to be criminals statistically, because you are going to reduce poverty by giving some people at least the opportunity to better themselves and to apply for jobs. You're saving more money at the societal level, I would bet, than what the libraries cost. So I think even the economic argument is in favor of libraries.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what he would say, because obviously Amazon stores, you have to pay for the resources, you have to pay for the access to books. So on its face, it doesn't look like it's as good as libraries are. But he would say that, well, libraries aren't free, right? We have to pay for it through our tax money. Usually
Sure.
it comes out of property taxes. And for him, I guess it was about $500 a year.
Yep.
So
I don't know if that's true, but
I don't know if
okay.
that's true either, but maybe he thinks he would have to pay far less if people could just go to the Amazon bookstores instead of having to go to the library.
And that's where my argument, I think, would come in, which
Yeah.
is no, actually, everything from your property taxes to have more police because your neighborhood is more dangerous because there are no libraries, you would end up getting that, you would end up having to pay that money under some other pretense anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether we can actually get specific data on this, but that would be the gist. It's the same idea as you might save a little bit on your insurance if you don't have to subsidize people that can't afford insurance, but then they're going to be using the emergency room as their primary care, and that then is just going to figure back into what you pay for insurance, and you're not going to end up actually saving any money.
Sure. I mean, I think there's a sound argument to be made that libraries have to adapt to the new information age,
Sure.
right? Maybe spend less on books and, movies and that sort of thing, the hard copies, and just
More on digital
expand
stuff, yeah.
digital stuff, yeah, computer labs, that sort of thing. I think that makes perfect sense.
And a lot of libraries are doing that. I mean, the facilities here in Boston, they do classes on internet literacy, applying for jobs online. They're doing it. They're doing it. The good libraries are actually doing it. Send me your thoughts. If you believe that libraries are a waste of taxpayer money, I doubt that there would be that many people in our audience who would believe that. But if you do, please get in touch and we'll read the comments from some of those folks if they're thoughtful, right? If it's an obvious troll, which I wouldn't expect from our bonus show audience, by the way, then we won't. But I think there would be some interesting follow-up if there are people in our audience who particularly consider themselves to be on the left, but still think we shouldn't be funding public libraries. That's it for today. New show tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.